You don't belong here. Aunt Patricia's voice sliced through the balmy evening like a cold blade. This is a celebration for people who've made something of themselves, not for charity cases. She stood firm in the grand doorway of her mansion, bearing my entry to Grandma Rose's 80th birthday party. Behind her, fairy lights shimmered across marble walls and expensive floral arrangements, casting sharp shadows over her Botox-sculpted face. Her sneer gleamed, equal parts disdain and satisfaction. My name is Dr. Olivia Chen, and at 32, I had just been named Chief of Surgery at Metropolitan General. But to my family, I was still the black sheep, the idealistic medical student who'd rejected the family's gilded path for a calling that wasn't defined by profit margins or cocktail parties. I only came to wish Grandma a happy birthday, I said, steadying my voice. In my hand was a soft gift bag, suddenly weightier than it should have been. Inside was a shawl I'd hand-knit during midnight breaks between surgeries, a delicate piece of sky-blue warmth in Grandma's favorite color. Let me guess, came my cousin Madison's voice, syrupy and cruel. She stepped into view, a vision of luxury in her tailored designer gown. Another one of your little handmade things? That's sweet. Embarrassing, but sweet. She adjusted her diamond bracelet so the gems caught the light, her smirk glowing brighter than the fairy lights. It wasn't their words that stung, not really. I'd grown callous to the digs, the sideways glances. It was the sound of laughter from inside, of clinking glasses and Grandma's voice floating through a speech I wasn't invited to hear. It was the smell of lemon cake, Grandma's favorite, drifting out to the porch, once a scent of comfort. Now it only curled in my stomach like smoke. Fine, I said softly, setting the gift down on the step like something sacred. Please make sure she gets this. I turned to go. Behind me, Madison didn't bother lowering her voice. Can you believe she's still at that public hospital? Such a waste of talent. No wonder Uncle James barely acknowledges her anymore. Uncle James, the family's star physician. My father's brother. The man who ran the prestigious Chen Medical Group, where every doctor in our family conveniently found a position, if they played by his rules. He'd offered me a role, once. It came with a salary and a cage. I slid into my old Honda Civic, its engine humming with familiarity. I could afford something newer now, sleeker, but every spare dollar had gone toward something bigger. A dream. One they knew nothing about. As I pulled away, a black Mercedes glided past in the opposite direction. My father's car. His eyes didn't even flicker toward me. The next morning, I stood in my armor again, my white coat, crisp and commanding, in the surgical wing of Metropolitan General. My name badge caught the light. Dr. Olivia Chen, Chief of Surgery. Dr. Chen. I turned to see Sarah, one of the residents, hurrying toward me. The board's here early. They want to review the trauma center proposal. I nodded, confidence returning with every step. This was where I belonged, not in banquet halls, but in places where lives hung in the balance. Where I mattered. The conference room buzzed with anticipation. The hospital board members had gathered to hear about the project I'd nurtured for years. A state-of-the-art level eye trauma center designed to serve the city's most vulnerable. Your proposal is ambitious, said Mr. Thompson, the board chair. But the funding. I clicked the first slide of my presentation. I've secured $50 million from private donors and grants. With the hospital's match, we can break ground in 6 months. Gasps and murmurs of approval rippled across the room. This project, my project, would revolutionize emergency care in our city. My family thought I was toiling in obscurity, but I was building something that would outlive every cocktail party they'd ever thrown. After the meeting, my phone buzzed. A message from Madison. Sorry you missed the party. But honestly, it's better this way. The photos look so much more elegant without you in them. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned to my window, where the construction crews had already begun laying the foundation for the trauma center. Soon, my name would be etched into its walls, not because of a last name, but because of sleepless nights, grit, and relentless belief. They called me a charity case. They had no idea I was about to change the face of emergency medicine in this city. And I knew one thing for certain. The day was coming when they'd walk through the doors of my trauma center, seeking help, salvation, or maybe just a second chance. And when they did, they'd learn what real legacy looks like. As I reviewed my surgical schedule for the next day, I smiled. They had banished me from their world. But I was building my own. The sound of hammers and drills echoed in the distance, a rhythm of progress louder than their sneers. And though I couldn't know it yet, our next encounter would come sooner than I imagined, and it would change everything. 6 months passed in a blur, a relentless tide of surgeries, strategy meetings, and construction milestones. And now, at last, the trauma center was nearly complete. Its glass and steel facade glistened against the skyline like a promise fulfilled. In just 2 weeks, the world would see what I'd built, what I fought to bring into existence. I was in my office reviewing the final equipment orders when Sarah burst through the door, breathless and pale. "Dr. Chen," she gasped, "multiple vehicle collision on the interstate. 2 critical patients, one with severe internal bleeding." I was already grabbing my coat. "Names?" She hesitated. Her eyes met mine. "It's your Aunt Patricia." And Madison was driving. The air left the room. For a split second, time froze, then instinct took over. "Prep or 1 and 2, I ordered, already halfway to the emergency bay. Patricia's the bleeder." Sarah nodded. "Yes, but Dr. Chen, are you sure you should?" "I'm the best trauma surgeon in this hospital," I said firmly. "And that's all that matters right now." The wail of sirens greeted me outside the ER as the ambulances pulled in. I caught sight of 2 familiar figures rushing through the sliding glass doors. My father and Uncle James, their faces pinched with panic. They froze when they saw me. "Olivia," Uncle James looked stunned. "What are you doing here?" "I'm the chief of surgery," I said, stepping aside as the stretcher rolled past. "And I'm about to save your wife's life." Aunt Patricia lay unconscious, blood soaking her expensive blouse. Her once meticulously groomed hair was matted with sweat and crimson. Behind her, Madison thrashed on her gurney, mascara streaked and voice shrill. "We can't be here," she wailed. "This is a public hospital. Daddy, do something." A nurse turned to Uncle James. "Sir, Metropolitan General is the only level 1 trauma center within 50 miles. With injuries this severe, they need to be here." I was already assessing Patricia's vitals. "She's crashing. Massive internal bleed. Or 1 now." I turned to my team. "Dr. Evans, take Madison. Likely concussion, fractured ribs, stable but watch her closely." My father stepped forward. "Maybe we should transfer them to James's facility." "They won't survive the transfer," I cut in sharply. "Either get out of my way or go sit in the family room. I have work to do." Hours later, I stood in OR1, hands deep in what remained of Aunt Patricia's ruptured abdomen. Every motion was deliberate. Every second mattered. The irony wasn't lost on me. This woman, who had locked me out of family celebrations, now had her life in my hands. Through the observation window, I could see Uncle James pacing helplessly. He was a skilled surgeon in his own right. But his world was elective procedures and pristine clinics. This was my arena, the chaos, the urgency, the real fight. Pressure's dropping. A nurse called out. "More suction." I snapped. "I see the bleeder. Clamp." We worked for another 2 hours, the aura tense ballet of controlled chaos. When I finally stepped back, sweat clinging to my neck beneath the surgical cap, I nodded. "Close her up. She's going to make it." In the surgical waiting room, my family sat rigid among strangers, designer clothes at odds with the battered plastic chairs and vending machines. When I entered, Uncle James shot to his feet. "Patricia." "The surgery was successful," I said, my voice steady and professional. "She lost a lot of blood and we had to remove her spleen, but she's stable. Madison's injuries are minor, concussion, 2 broken ribs. She'll be fine." They exhaled, relief hitting them like a wave. My father opened his mouth to speak. "Olivia." But he didn't get the chance. Mr. Thompson appeared at my side, flanked by a small camera crew. "Dr. Chen." Perfect timing. "We're filming final interviews for the opening ceremony. Would you mind saying a few words?" Uncle James blinked. "Founder?" I smiled. "Of course." I turned to face the camera, composure flawless. "The Chen Emergency and Trauma Center opens next week," I began. "This facility was built to ensure that world-class trauma care is available to everyone, not just those who can afford it." As I spoke, I saw it, on every face in the room. Shock, disbelief, and for the first time, shame. Behind them, visible through the tall windows, workers were finishing the installation of gleaming silver letters across the front of the building. CHE and Emergency and Tire UNA Center. They'd once called me a charity case, laughed at my choices, locked me out. And yet here we were, their lives saved, their reputations preserved because of the very place they'd mocked, the place I had built. But none of this had been for them. It was for every life yet to be saved, every child, mother, and father who couldn't afford glossy clinics or country club referrals. I hadn't just built a trauma center. I built a legacy. And little did they know, this was just the beginning. The morning of the trauma center's opening ceremony dawned bright and clear. I stood in my office, adjusting my suit and looking out at the crowd gathering below. Reporters, medical professionals, and city officials mingled with hospital staff and board members. In the front row, surprisingly, sat Grandma Rose in her wheelchair, a familiar blue shawl draped around her shoulders. She'd been released from Aunt Patricia's recovery room just long enough to attend. My heart warmed seeing her wearing the gift they'd once mocked me for giving. Dr. Chin. Sarah poked her head in. It's time. Walking onto the stage, I felt years of hard work culminating in this moment. The cameras flashed as Mr. Thompson introduced me, his voice filled with pride. Dr. Olivia Chen didn't just envision a trauma center, he announced. She created a beacon of hope for our community. Through her dedication and brilliant fundraising efforts, she's transformed Metropolitan General into a world-class facility. As I stepped up to the podium, I caught sight of my family scattered throughout the audience. Aunt Patricia, still recovering but insisting on attending, sat pale but alert. Madison beside her, arm in a sling, looking anywhere but at me. Uncle James and my father stood in the back, their usual confidence notably absent. When I chose to work at Metropolitan General, many people questioned my decision. They saw a public hospital as beneath their standards, but I saw an opportunity to make a real difference. I paused, meeting my father's eyes in the crowd. This trauma center isn't about prestige or profit. It's about ensuring that everyone, regardless of their status or wealth, has access to life-saving care when they need it most. Sometimes life's most important moments come when we least expect them, and where we least expect to find them. After the ceremony, as the crowd mingled over champagne and hors d'oeuvres, Grandma Rose wheeled herself over to me. My brilliant girl, she said, taking my hand. I always knew you were special. I'm so sorry about the birthday party. Patricia told me you never showed up. They didn't tell you the truth, did they? I asked gently. No, she sighed. But I've learned a lot these past few weeks. Patricia told me everything from her hospital bed, about how they treated you, about how you saved her life anyway. Before I could respond, Aunt Patricia approached slowly, still moving carefully from her surgery. Olivia, she said, her voice quieter than I ever heard it. I need to say something. When I was lying there in that car, bleeding and scared, all I could think was, please let someone help us. And then I saw you, and despite everything, you did. She took a shaky breath. I've never been more wrong about anyone in my life. One by one, my family members approached. Madison mumbling an awkward thanks. Uncle James admitting that my trauma surgery skills surpassed anything he'd seen. My father struggling to find words to bridge the gap years of dismissal had created. The next family event, Grandma Rose announced firmly, is next Sunday. Dinner at my house. And Olivia, my dear, you're not just invited. You're the guest of honor. I smiled, touching the soft blue shawl around her shoulders. I'd like that. Later that evening, after the crowds had gone and the excitement had died down, I walked through the halls of my trauma center. The plaque by the entrance caught my eye. The Chen Emergency and Trauma Center, where every life matters. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. The family group photos from Grandma's birthday look weird without you. Maybe we can take new ones on Sunday. I smiled, remembering her words from 6 months ago about the photos looking more elegant without me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising above and creating something meaningful. The emergency alert system suddenly blared to life. Multiple trauma incoming. 4 minutes out. I grabbed my white coat, heading toward the emergency bay. Success hadn't changed who I was or why I'd chosen this path. I was still Dr. Olivia Chen, and I had lives to save. But now finally I had something else too. A family who saw me for who I really was. Not bad for a charity case they'd once been ashamed to claim as their own.